So at this point with Kemba Walker, it should not be a total surprise that he has basically been removed from the rotation, like Tom Thibodeau has said at this point for the New York Knicks. And really, a lot of it, I'm not trying to blame Tom Thibodeau, I'm not trying to blame the coaching staff, but it never was going to fit with Kemba Walker and what the New York Knicks are trying to do as a basketball team. As a basketball team, the New York Knicks want to play incredible defense, get out in transition, and, in their moments, get their fast break points and have decent, efficient half-court offense. They don't want to be the team running up and down the court like Kemba Walker is more accustomed to doing as a guy who can just get the ball and run down the court, hit layups, hit threes, do what Kemba Walker does. That's not what he's going to be able to do with the New York Knicks rotation. And especially when you think of the fact that, Julius Randle is basically the guy for this team. RJ Barrett is the secondary threat for this team. Alec Burks, Derrick Rose, Emmanuel Quickley. There's other guys who deserve to have the ball on this team in a extended role. And at this point, Kemba Walker has not been able to efficiently put himself into that rotation as a completely consistent guy. The first two halves of the season so far for the Los Angeles Rams have been a completely different story from each other. When you look at the first 5 games of the season for the Rams, you're looking at a team who has a 4-1 record with wins against the Seattle Seahawks, the Buccaneers, the Colts, and the Bears. And the one loss that they have all season through that point is to an Arizona Cardinals team who started either 8-0 or 9-0 to begin the season and were looking like the best team in the NFL for a little bit. However, the last 6 games for the Los Angeles Rams have been completely opposite. The 3 wins that the Rams have in the last month and a half of the NFL season are against the New York Giants, Detroit Lions, and Houston Texans. 3 teams who are in the running for worst teams in the NFL. And in the Lions' case, they probably are the worst team in the NFL. In the Houston Texans' case, they're probably the worst team in the AFC. And after that Houston Texans win in Week 8, they followed up with 3 straight losses against 3 decent teams in the Titans, the 49ers, and the Packers. And in that game against the San Francisco 49ers, they got completely demolished 10-31, in a game that kind of continued the trend of Sean McVay's struggles against Kyle Shanahan in their rivalry since the two of them got to their respective teams. Now, at this point, it's dumb to say that the Rams aren't going to go to the Super Bowl. It's dumb. It would have been dumb a few weeks ago to say that the Rams were going to the Super Bowl. It's dumb to assume either of those things, even in Week 12 of an NFL season. But with that being said, the Rams do have some things that they do need to look at and realize that it is a rough spot for their team. Obviously, the running game. Now, I'm not going to completely blame Los Angeles and Sean McVay or Matt Stafford in the offense because their main guy, Cam Akers, went down with injury. Even guys like Robert Woods going down with injuries does affect their running game. Just guys in general going down on this team affects their running game. And their offensive line is an offensive line that, even though it is good, it is a very decent offensive line. It is deteriorating. Andrew Whitworth is getting up there in age. The rest of their offensive line is not young by any standard. And it's just in general not an offensive line that I think was looked at as an incredible run blocking team. And that not only affects their running game, but it affects the passing game as well. Now, I want to say one thing about Matt Stafford, and really just one thing in general. Matt Stafford has been possibly the most consistent quarterback in the NFL over this entire season. I understand that their offense has moments where they look terrible. I understand their offense has moments where they look, predictable. I understand that they just at some points look like they are not a good offense. But he's the only quarterback in the NFL outside of Tom Brady, outside of Kyler Murray, to throw for over 200 yards every single game that he has played this season. And to me, that's just a mark of consistency. The only facet of this offense that has not been consistent is the running game. You look, they have a few games where they're up over even 120 yards. 131 against the Giants, 165 against the Texans. But then you see games like 47 yards against the Lions, or 52 yards against the Niners, or 68 yards against the Packers. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they're not running the ball well, but also a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're not running the ball a lot. And part of that has to do with the fact that they don't have Cam Akers, like I have said, or if I haven't said it at this point, they don't have Cam Akers. That's the guy that they were really looking forward to, not just running the ball, but in the passing game as well. So not having him has been a big problem for them. Now, if you want to be tossing around blame for the Los Angeles Rams, which basically is what I'm going to do here, the defense. They're 21st in points allowed. They're 21st in passing yards allowed, 9th in rushing yards allowed. Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, and that defense is not playing well. That's just... there's no other way to put it. They are going against some good offenses, though. You can't necessarily completely blame them because, the games that they struggle, they're going against elite quarterbacks. They give up 446 yards against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They give up 465 against the Cardinals. They give up 415. They give up 415 against the Lions. Now, that's not good. 400 against the Packers, another 355 against the Seahawks. They give up a lot of yards to good teams, but they also give up a lot of yards to some bad teams. They give up a lot of points to some bad teams. They give up a lot of points to good teams. That either way, they're doing things not really consistently well on the defensive side of the ball. And the only real reason I would think that is true is because of the fact that a lot of their guys aren't necessarily being used in a correct manner. Jalen Ramsey doesn't necessarily get told to go against the number one guy. I think if you tell Jalen Ramsey to go against Davante Adams for most of that game against the Packers, it's a different story. I think if you're lining up Aaron Donald in different spots throughout the game and not just majority-wise on one side of the ball, you're putting him on the same side of Von Miller. You're putting him on the same side of Leonard Floyd, or you're putting him, in the interior. You're just moving him around to different spots. That game against the Packers is different. And I think some of this frustration for the defense is starting to seep out. You saw Aaron Donald basically choking that guy for the Green Bay Packers on the offensive line. You see Jalen Ramsey every time he sees a linebacker give up a first down to Davante Adams or to a slot wide receiver because of their poor schematic ability on that side of the ball. You see Jalen Ramsey get frustrated. You see everyone get frustrated. Darius Williams has taken a step back from where he was last year in terms of being an elite number 2 cornerback. You see guys like Taylor Rapp. You see guys in the secondary who just aren't making the name for themselves like they were last year. Their linebacking core outside of Von Miller, who is basically a pass rusher, just majority at this point, they don't have any, linebackers who can make plays. They just don't. And I think a lot of that, look around at teams who are struggling this year. They have poor linebacker play. And the Los Angeles Rams are falling into line with that, with that pattern. At this point for the Rams, if this defense keeps playing the way they are right now, they're not going to make it through to the Super Bowl. They're not going to host the Super Bowl. They're probably not even going to make the championship game for the NFC. But if the defense starts to figure it out a little bit more, like I said, offensively, they're fine. They're fine on offense. Matthew Stafford is fine. He's going to figure things out. Like I said, this is the first time he's playing competitive football for an entire season. Playing football, he's expected to play at a high level for an entire season. This is the first time he's had to do it. So he's had some growing pains. There's no question about it. But offensively, they're still consistently towards the top of the league in almost every single category that matters outside of running the ball. Defensively, if they figure out, they have a young defensive coordinator in Raheem Morris. You have to remember that they lost their defensive coordinator who has done an incredible job for the LA Chargers and Brandon Staley. If Raheem Morris figures it out, and the defense figures it out around him, then this team is going to return to that championship caliber that we saw them potentially as before this season started.